We're going to go back to some powerful speakers, some concrete actions with our next speaker, Surveyor Efik. Surveyor is an environmentalist and a climate change specialist with experience of well over 10 years as former national coordinator of the Climate Change Network Nigeria. It's a national civil society coalition in Nigeria. He is a fellow at the Center for Development Innovation of the Wageningen University and the Research in the Netherlands. He is a fellow at the Diplo Foundation Institute, the Climate Action Network International, and the UN Habitat World Urban Campaign. Efik has served on many civil society representative bodies at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, at the National Interministerial Committee on Climate Change, and more recently at the National Technical Committee of REDD, that's for forest conservation. He is a renowned speaker on various issues of climate change, including on the 64th annual UNDP conference in Bonn, Germany. Surveyor, thank you for being with us tonight and for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you very much. My topic is on the reality of climate change impacts in West Africa with the food insecurity perspective. I'm going to take you guys to the impacts that climate change actually covers. Global climate change is recognized as a critical phenomenon with strong implications for socio-ecological, biophysical, and human systems, and consequently human development. The impact of climate change is evident on areas such as agriculture, fisheries, energy, water, human health, food security, biodiversity, and ecosystem services. Industry also is impacted, human settlements are impacted, and the occurrence of natural disasters. But I'm going to focus on food security. What areas do we understand to mean by food security? Some research has made us understand that potential impacts of climate change on vulnerability to food security include both direct nutritional effects, that is changes in consumption quantities and composition, the quality of food we eat, and then livelihood effects, which is changes in employment opportunities and the cost of acquiring adequate nutrition. So this is the scope of what we mean by food insecurity as impacted by climate change. West Africa is one of the most food insecure regions of the world. And from the presentations of my colleagues who have spoken before me, you could get to understand that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change further said that warming global temperatures are likely to reduce West African agricultural production by up to 50% by the year 2020. And we are in 2020 right now. You can see that the impact of food security caused by climate change has gone up so drastically. I'm going to take you through the impact for we to really understand why this support or this launch is very, very critical. Look at Nigerian map, the physical map of Nigeria. You see the northern region of Nigeria is the arid region, the dry lands. And then the southern part is the lowlands, or we can say wet regions also. Then in the north, you can find decreased precipitation, which is decrease in rainfall patterns. You can observe and experience drought. You can observe and experience desert encroachment. In the south, which is the lowlands, you can see increase in precipitation, that's the rainfall patterns. You can also see floods, and you can see sea level rise. These features reflect across West Africa. So the way you're seeing Nigeria, that's how it spreads around the northern part of West Africa and the southern part of West Africa. Now I'm going to take you some other evidence-based scenarios that we observed in Nigeria, and as we also see across West Africa. Look at the picture of Abuja atmosphere. It's clear no industries is located in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. But you come to the commercial headquarters of Nigeria, which is Lagos City, where the atmosphere is very brownish and dusty due to industrial pollution. These are the things that causes climate change, and these are the things that also skyrocket the impacts of climate change among the people. And look at deforestation going on. And then look at the Lake Chad, which my colleague Isaac spoke about initially. In 1963, we can see the size of Lake Chad, which used to be a hub, an agricultural hub those days in Africa, or in West Africa specifically, it was full. The water there is very full, very full. And it was a source of domestic water, the source of the most water for agriculture and food production. In 1973, it got reduced. In 1987, it got reduced to just few patches. In 1997, we saw some just 3 patches around, patches of water, I mean. Then in 2001, just 1 patch of water. In present time, it's completely dry and full of sand. It's dry, no water again. That means no agricultural activities going on in that region, in the Lake Chad region. And so it is in other parts of the northern region of West Africa. So you can see that the impact of climate change is eating into the northern region of Nigeria, while sea level rise and flood is also eating deep into the landmass of Nigeria in the south. And so we just have the middle belt to struggle the resources with. Look at Yobe State in the northern part of Nigeria, where the desert encroachment has engulfed a whole community. And those communities will relocate from the north and come down to the south. Look at biodiversity loss. The whole land is laying dry and empty. And then you come to the side, you see flooding, see women struggling with their properties, see the sea level rise. That's why I name it sight and scenes of climate change impacts. This is another aspect that is also exacerbating the impact of food security in Nigeria, the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, where we have the oil spillage on the land, where we have the gas flaring in the air, meaning that the water, the land, and the air are seriously polluted. In the Niger Delta, environmental degradation has led to a substantial decline in local food production. That is a fact. This has contributed to scarcity and an astronomical increase in the price of food, placing it beyond the reach of the vast majority of the local people. The consumption patterns and quality of food consumed are equally vital, with most local people lacking access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food for their dietary needs. This is exactly what is happening across West Africa and across the Niger Delta, the oil and gas region of Nigeria, comprising about 9 states. If you see the map of Nigeria up there, those 9 states are what we refer to as the oil-producing Niger Delta region. Now, having looked at the impacts across Nigeria, I'm showing you now the impacts in the futures in West Africa. The northern part of West Africa is still the arid region. The southern part of West Africa is the lowland region. Now, food security remains a major structural problem in the economic community of West African states. That is ECOWAS, comprising about 15 states across the West African sub-region. Out of its 308 million inhabitants, 40 million people are undernourished and suffer from chronic malnutrition. Every year, food crises affect additional millions of people. This is exactly what we're experiencing as a result of impact of climate change, because the lands are no longer fertile to farm. And then the water, the flood has also killed a lot of farm crops. And so the traditional occupation of the people, which has been farming and fishing, is eroded away, is no longer there, is impacted by climate change. And so they begin to look for alternative livelihoods which are not found, and which is the essence of this launch, so that we can send some support in terms of alternative livelihoods to them. Now I'm showing you another scope, the West Africa's food security outlook in 2018. Please take a look at the yellow patches, which is stressed condition of food security. Now look at the brown patches is the phase 3, which is crisis situation of food insecurity. Now, you can see just few yellow patches, which means few areas are stressed. There's a grayish area around the southern part of Nigeria, means that there were no data analyzed. So that's why it's like that. So the areas you see that are bluish are minimal area, and data were all analyzed there. So some 4.5 million people in the Sahel and West Africa were in need of assistance during the period from October to December 2018. About 182,000 people required emergency assistance in Nigeria, Mali, the Gambia, Mauritania, Niger, and Chad. If appropriate measures are not taken, nearly 8.9 million people, including 4.5 million in Nigeria alone, could be affected by June to August 2019. Let's see the outlook in 2019 and the situation. You can see a lot of yellow patches, which means a lot of stressed situation. You can see a large portion of brown patches, which means a lot of crisis situation. The yellow and the brownish have taken over the minimal portion. And so you can see that in 2019, which was just last year, the situation in West Africa is very daring. Most areas will remain in minimal phase 1 food insecurity until May 2020, and some will remain in stressed phase 2. The primary country is Mali, other countries Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Mauritania, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal. These are real critical situations. Another exacerbation factor is the COVID-19, which we have all heard from our previous speaker. I'm not going to dwell much on that. It shows that this has also impacted on the food security situation in West Africa. Armed conflict is another exacerbating factor, which has also led to food insecurity situation to be in a stressed proportion and also in crisis proportion. So I'm not going to dwell much on that again because of time. Conflict intensity, I just want to let you know that conflict intensity measured by number of fatalities increases number of days where the household had to rely on less preferred foods, limit the variety of foods eaten, limit the portion size of meals consumed is very, very critical. I just want to mention this for you to know what we have been doing. This is the traditional mode of cooking, which is wood fuel, using wood fuel, that's firewood, to cook. This is what is experienced across the West African sub-region. Traditional fuel for cooking is this. And now, because of deforestation and climate change impact, lack of access to clean source of food production is not there in terms of using clean energy sources for cooking. We need that. Lack of sustainable agricultural practices or climate smart agriculture, the practice is not there. That should be done too. Lack of alternative livelihoods apart from farming and fishing is no longer there. But in Climate Change Network, comprising of about 160 diverse nonprofits and civil society groups, we've been doing a lot. Now, this particular code is the driver that will send all of us to support this African Climate Action Initiative. What is it about? Say, if these vulnerable groups, farmers and livestock farmers and other dependent on climate and natural resources, do not receive outside aid to help them adapt, the socioeconomic and cultural systems that underlie rural and even urban communities in West Africa could be eroded or completely destroyed. This was a research report in 2009. And since then, we've swung into action to make sure that we reduce the impact in the area of food insecurity in Nigeria and by extension, West Africa. Access to clean fuel for food production. We devised what we call Save 80 stove. It's a clean energy stove. As the name implies, cooking with the Save 80 stove saves 80% of the wood consumption compared to the traditional open fireplace. With just few pieces of sticks on the ground, you can cook a large meal for a large family. The Save 80 needs just about 250 grams of wood to prepare a delicious pot of jollof rice that can feed 15 people. This is commonly being circulated in Nigeria right now. With this, I'm going to show you how it is being operated. And in 2009, when we were preparing to go for the United Nations Summit on Climate Change in Copenhagen, we organized a national conference, and we used this device. We used this Save 80 stove to cook within the hotel premises that we used and serve the food to all the participants that attended the meeting. We also have what we call the Wonder Box. You can just parboil the rice and then bring it from the stove and put it in the Wonder Box and cover it. The heat there will make the rice to done without using firewood. These are some of the things we have done. Some other members of the network, like I told you, is a very big network in Nigeria, like the Better Living Foundation. They've been doing a lot in terms of sustainable agriculture, like Women Environmental Program. They've been doing a lot in terms of sustainable agriculture, like Young Brains Initiative. They've been doing a lot on this agricultural part of it, because food insecurity is very critical in this West African sub-region. We have Olumide Idou, who has also been doing a lot in the area of recycling, and we have African Cleanup Initiative that has been doing recyclers pay. Women are called upon to pick some plastics on the streets and bring them, and then they will be paid. And that money is used to support their children's school fees. It's paid directly to their children's schools. So in this case, the poverty level has been reduced. These are the activities that some of our members have been doing. This is another picture of the Save 80 stove, whereby families are using it to cook right now in Nigeria. And so we need support to escalate it to West African sub-region. And so other recommendation, because time is of essence, African Climate Action Initiative through CAP Network should consider the establishment of a bottom-up multi-stakeholder and multi-institutional participatory platform for information sharing in Africa, capacity building and skills outreach, as in from Canada to Africa and Africa to Canada, because of the support we're trying to muster to support activities, climate mitigation and adaptation in West Africa, and by extension, Africa as a whole. We need to encourage the use of renewable energy and clean energy sources in West Africa, like using the solar cook stove, another mode of clean cook stove for cooking in Nigeria. Empowering women to establish cottage industries will also be another way of giving them alternative livelihoods, because most women they can't farm and they cannot also fish. Then the use I've mentioned about the use of wood. There's one critical aspect I need to mention too, the area of this oil and gas pollution. In 2016, I led a very big campaign called Break Free from Fossil Fuels campaign. We told the Nigerian government to bury the oil in the ground, and let's explore other sources of other natural sources for development, because the oil is like a cost to Nigeria. So let the government bury the oil in the ground. That was another way of telling the government this oil is also contributing to food insecurity. This oil is contributing to the impact of climate change. So what do? Let us bury it in the ground and use other sources and explore other sources for livelihood and for national growth. So that campaign was very critical. It's also a way of pushing further for the promotion of a sustainable food security West Africa and Nigeria. Thank you very much for your attention.